That Thursday edition of ESPN FC Extra Time, a little extra Thursday for you, Craig. You're not normally here on a Thursday.
No.
Well, because he knows you're here.
I've never put two and two together there and come up with that.
Come up with you.
It's not you.
2 and 2 equals
I can't believe you do that to
Right,
you.
Brian McBride is here. Gab Marcotti is.
And by the way, I'll not be back on a Thursday either.
There you go. See?
Slim pickings today.
There's a May you're already penciled in.
We've even
I've got
talked
it
about
down here.
Fulham today.
We will get to Fulham.
Hey.
We will get to Fulham. Before we get to Fulham, Lumsey wants to start us off with something that Julien Laurens was touching on. Jules said he's texting buddies with Hugo Lloris. Which of the present crop of players are texting buddies with the guys on the couch? Not that we have a couch.
I'll tell you,
anymore.
none. Zero. Since I've stopped playing and went into this job back in England, don't text managers, don't text players, don't interact with any coaches, any of them. But no interest. I'll tell you why. Because, and I see it all the time here in America and in the UK, to be fair, is people that do my job hanging about tunnels and football clubs, hugging, shaking hands and patting backs and kissing backsides of managers and coaches and players, and then go up to the commentary booth and are unable to do their job properly because they've compromised themselves. So then when mistakes happen, they give a half-hearted analysis because they don't want to upset the mate that's already down there. So that's only my perspective.
Right.
None. There's a wall here, I'm on this side, and they're on that side. Am I being harsh?
Not at all. No, you can't.
Because if I was down when you were coaching, going, hey, Stevie, how you doing? And then I was upstairs and going, oh, he's making mistakes.
Yeah.
How can you do that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Brian, you have the same perspective? I mean, is it different for ex-players and just true journalists? I imagine it is, but...
Oh, he's an ex-player. They're both ex-players.
Well, I know, but so...
No, I think...
Jules is the journalist.
I think what it matters to me is when you give your opinion, it's of an opinion of seeing the whole story. And if the person, whether he's your friend or he's not, if the person doesn't understand that you're giving your opinion on how you might have handled the situation, then I don't think they're necessarily going to think you of as a friend anyways.
No, by the way, that's different for Jules and journalists because they have to have, they've got stories.
Well, yeah, I mean...
When was it the Revs? When was it the Revs?
Contact.
If anybody was printing anything in the paper that was criticising me, I'll tell you the first thing I did was I went straight up to them, stuck my finger right in their face.
Yeah.
And they certainly weren't, and I don't care who they were.
Yeah, but my point to that would be that I'd stand my ground and say, listen, it's my opinion. You don't like it, I understand.
It's
if
impossible.
you don't want to be friends anymore, that's cool.
Craig summed it up. It's impossible to have a friendship with somebody if you're a friend of somebody who in a position is going to have to criticise you to do the job properly. Because there's no way, as a coach, everybody says coaches are paranoid. Well, you are paranoid. Because everybody's trying to tell you what to do.
It's part of life.
And give you stick.
Every time you've gone through a period of your life, if you've gone through a period of your life where you haven't had somebody critiquing you or telling you you've done something wrong or saying you've done something right, then I don't know who's lived.
On the TV or in the newspapers or...
Then you might not respect that person, but you still have to be able to take that on board. Yes, you can.
Brian, commentating particularly in England and the Premier League for years and in Scottish football is you compromise yourself by integrating with these people. You do. You might not think you do, but you do, because subconsciously when things happen and big calls and managers get into fights and they have a run of bad results, subconsciously you will probably give them an easier time. Now, that to me is detrimental to being able to do your job properly. Now, when they say, we go and see the coaches because we learn things. No, you don't. That's just muppets on social media that believe that, because they only tell you. Steve Nicol isn't going to tell me and you everything that's going to happen.
Not a chance.
Oh, we're going to work on that free kick. Oh, we're going to work on that. And I just see it too often now. It's too much backslapping between pundits and members of football teams and coaches, and some of them are even close to having ambassadorial roles. They're nothing short, some of them, of these pundits have been ambassadors for clubs, yet they're taking the buck from TV companies to give an opinion. That's just not me.
You could hear Gab chuckling in the background. You haven't weighed in on this, Gab. I imagine your perspective is rather different.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sort of in between giving opinions and obviously reporting what you know. You have to be able to speak to people. The more intelligent ones understand that when you reach out to them, they don't have to write back, and that that they trust you if they do, and you're not going to hang them out to dry. Equally, the more intelligent ones understand that you're doing your job, and if they need to, and if you need to criticize them, that's the thing. I never played with any of these people, and surprisingly, I don't think while they were playing, there was maybe count on one hand the people who, I would consider friends. Beyond that, they're people you know professionally, and really more so than players. At least in my case, it's club officials, it's agents, members of coaching staff, managers. They sometimes know that they benefit from answering your questions. The questions you ask, you're not asking for inside information, but you're asking, well, what is the mindset here? What are you trying to do? What does person X, I won't say who it is, at Arsenal, but he may well be Spanish, think about Ozil? What does he think Ozil's problem is? And then you don't go and quote the guy and say, Ozil isn't playing for this, and that reason, but you get a kind of a better sense of why that might be the case, and might have something to do with Ozil's wages and the fact that he's difficult to move.
There's ways to go about it, but basically at the end of the day, there comes a time when you've got to criticise somebody. And if you're his friend, then you're not going to do it properly.
I totally disagree with you.
But Gab's coming from
you can definitely criticize your friend. For sure you can. What you don't need to do is make it into a soundbite. You don't need to come off with some crazy wordage that is going to get headlines.
In an ideal world, in an ideal world, what you're saying is right.
Yes.
In an ideal world. Unfortunately, that is absolutely not where we live. You can say anything. Some guy in a newspaper will splash it in some certain way all over the place.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
So
what I'm saying is, you and the person that it's, myself and the person that it's involved with, I can then have a conversation and explain to them, this is why I had that. And if they go, well, you know what, I don't want to hear it, we're probably never friends again.
But it's not.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't stop being friends with somebody.
It doesn't have to be somebody that you know well. It might have been somebody you played against or whatever. And you're in the tunnel before a game, and you're talking to this guy, and then you're up there and you have to criticise him. Trust me.
I'm not saying you don't talk to people
subconsciously.
Game time, around
you
game
think
time.
you're not you think you're not doing your job properly, but you're kind of holding back a little bit. I went into this job in my early 30s because I finished early, and a lot of the guys that I was commentating on, I'd played against because they were still playing. Mm-hmm. Some of them I'd played with. Managers I'd played against or worked for were still managing. But I had to distance myself. I did. I just. I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it, but I cut myself off and I said, I'm in this side of the fence.
I totally get it. I understand.
My uncle was the manager of Scotland when I was covering the Scottish national team for the company I was working for at the time. And I had to go in, I had to forget about him as my dad's brother because Scotland were having a bad time. And I had to go full in. My point is, there's too many people not prepared to go fully in when they're getting paid to do so because they have an interest within the whole scenario. Well, Gab's situation is different because a journalist...
I totally agree.
Go on, Gab.
But I think, Craig, on the back of that, it can work even more so with journalists because, you play with these guys, you have a relationship before. In some ways, you can take a stand, and hopefully, if they're intelligent, they'll understand why you do that. But I have a very good friend of mine, a very good colleague who was very close to a manager who won't say his name, but you can probably figure it out, who did extremely well in the 2005-06 season. And when it came to vote for the manager of the year for a major prize, this guy didn't vote for him, even though at that time they were speaking on the phone, once a week. He voted for Marcello Lippi because Lippi won the World Cup. And that guy and his agent sat him down and said, look, you're either with us or you're against us. This award is important. And we feel really disappointed that you didn't vote for us. or you didn't vote for him. So this kind of stuff happens, and from a journalist perspective, it can often be even tougher because this colleague of mine is an important journalist, but he's got a great career, but he wasn't an international footballer like you guys were. He doesn't have all your vast riches in the bank. So you have to make that call, and it is a question of integrity, I think, as Brian said before.
We should move on, should we? We could go on a long time with that.
Well, it is because sorry, I'm to go off again, but I see it too often. Yeah. I see it too often where pundits are aligning themselves to clubs and players because they think they're going to get. How many great interviews do we get by anybody being friends with a current player or a former player? Most of them come on are corpses from the ankles up. They can walk, but they can't talk. Seriously, we might get one brilliant exclusive from somebody in MLS or the Premier League or the Bundesliga once in a blue moon. The rest of them are like,
right,
they're popping up out the coffin to do the interview.